want to know education from historical down to its Lego foundations? What do you think?
I think everyone will be interested.
It is important that we should be able to know the history of education, and most importantly, the legal foundation, as a student and as a teacher.
According to Theodore Roosevelt, history of education is to educate a person in the mind, but not in morals. Is to educate a menace to society. It is also a study of the past that focuses on educational issues.
Informal education refers to the general social process by which human beings acquire the knowledge and skills needed to function in their culture.
Formal education refers to the process by which teachers instruct students in courses of study within institution.
Have you ever wondered how did education have started?
Education and pre-literate societies, and this is the earliest educational process. Pre-literate people used an oral tradition or storytelling to pass on their culture and history, and so this is why we Filipinos had these different kind of stories, or like what we call mga alamat.
Education in ancient Egypt, priests are the teachers. They teach not just about religion but also the principles of writing, sciences, mathematics, and architecture. And this is why we can also see that Egyptian temples, or what we call pyramid, is famous, and this because of history.
Likewise, in India, priests mostly had conducted their formal education. They teach the principles of Veda as well as science, grammar, and philosophy.
Meanwhile, in China, education started during the Eastern Zhou dynasty. They basically stressed out the curriculum in philosophy, poetry, and religion, in accord with their teaching of famous philosophers.
Romans focused on the study of war, conquest, politics, and civil administration. Only a minority of Romans had attended school, primary school, and secondary school.
In Jewish education, it was influenced on Western learning. Most information on ancient Jewish goals and methods of education comes from the Bible and the Talmud. Boys and girls were introduced to religion by studying the Torah.
In the medieval period, Western society and education were heavily shaped by Christianity. Education at this phase was directed in learning Latin or Old Roman language. It is divided into two eras, which is the Greek and Roman era, which is also divided into two types of population. Later, on 10th to early 11th centuries, Arabic learning had also descended influence in Western education.
And education during the Renaissance. During this time, scholars became more interested in the humanist features, that is, the secular or worldly rather than religious aspects of the Greek and Latin classics.
Meanwhile, education during the Protestant Reformation, Protestant religious reformers such as John Calvin, Martin Luther, and Hodge Zwingli as the ones who rejected the motion of the Catholic Pope and created a Reformed Christian. Education during the Protestant Reformation is established vernacular primary schools.
Educators of the 17th century developed new ways of thinking about education. A bishop known as Comenius created a new educational philosophy. Comenius advised teachers to use children's senses rather than memorizations in instructions.
In addition, in this period, John Locke had also examined how people acquire ideas.
Then education during the Enlightenment, also known as Age of Reason. Educators believed that people could improve their lives in society by using their reason, their power of critical thinking.
And did you also know that this Enlightenment principle had been considered as an instrument of social reform and improvement, which is a fundamental characteristic in the American education policy?
Wait, but what about 19th century? I heard it was the time when kindergarten has started, right?
Period where modern education was established, Swiss educator Johann Heinrich Pestalozzi developed an educational method based on the natural world and the senses. Also, Froebel established the child's garden which we call now as kindergarten, and also Spencer, who had revised Darwin's biological theory into social Darwinism.
European countries established a national system of education, and some of these are the United Kingdom, Germany, France, Italy, and also Russia. Also, countries in North and South America also established national education systems based largely on European models.
I bet education in the 20th century is way successful than 19th century, although they regarded the establishments of new ideas and concepts to help in education. But I want to know that what does the education in the 20th century looks like?
Education in the 20th century, it was influenced by the writings of a Swedish feminist and educator Ellen Key. Progressive education was a system of teaching that emphasized the needs and potentials of the child. Although Montessori's methods of early childhood became popular with times, but also Dewey disregarded the idea of just making the students get amused and entertained. However, Piaget had seriously wrote the development of thought and language patterns in children.
As 20th century began to expand in no time, political leadership has affected the education system of many countries in this period. The influence of politics in the education system had also been an issue, especially in the United States, where it has divided into races. In the Soviet Union, a rigid curriculum was established. In Germany, where they joined a federal state system, also in France, a central government was in full control of education.
Now, after taking us into history about the confusion of how did education really started and evolved through time, some people would be asking how law is being connected to the education. Now, let us talk what is law. According to Blackstone Commentaries 1847, law is a rule of civic conduct prescribed by the supreme power in a state, commanding what is right and prohibiting what is wrong. It is any rule of action requires any form of standard or patterns of which action are to be confirmed. Rule of personal conduct enforced by institutions called courts. Statutes, treaties, and conventions, judicial decisions are the main sources of law. Meanwhile, there are also types of law.
And there are also 8 types of law. This includes criminal law, an example is murder. Issues about employment, contracts, or taxes are examples of corporate laws. Next is the international law. An example for a commercial law is terminating or transferring a business. Family law, then the constitutional law. Labor law such as hiring and termination of private employees. Lastly, issues about copyright, patents, trademarks, and others are examples of intellectual property law.
Let's talk about Philippine sources of educational jurisprudence. Philippine Constitution of 1987, Article 14, Special in Education, it consists of sections, and these sections were solely aligned to having to provide the best education to everyone, just like in Section 1 for a quality education and is accessible to everyone. Also, in Section 5.3, states the right of every citizen to select a profession or course of study and the rights of teachers to professional growth. Also, the study of values was stated in Section 3.2.
What do these values include? I'm confused.
Okay, so these values includes patriotism, nationalism, love of humanity, respect for human rights, appreciation of the role of national heroes, and many more. It is already obvious, right, that this section focuses on the inner and outside of a person, the values that we got upon encountering education.
Educational Act of 1982 or the Batas Pambansa. This law consists of Section 10, Rights of all school personnel, 11, Special rights of privileges of teaching or academic staff, and 16, Teachers' obligations, and this helps understand the rights and the duties of the teachers.
Republic Act 7836, Article 1, this recognizes the vital role that teachers play in developing and literate citizens.
Then what is the difference of teaching and being a teacher?
Teaching is profession concerned primarily with classroom instruction, while teacher refers to all profession engaged in teaching. the one who acts the profession of teaching. And for us education students, somehow will be called teachers in the future. And teaching will be our profession. In addition, Board for Professional Teachers and Professional Regulation Commission is also connected and intertwined to what it is teaching and becoming a teacher. As stated in Article 2, there are two duties of the board. One is prescription of code of ethics and the professional standards for teachers. Second is looking into conditions which affect the teachers and teaching profession. Also in Article 3 is for the registration of professional teacher will begin after his name which has been enrolled in the roster of professional teachers, taking the professional oath, and so he can be finally practiced being a professional one. Article 4 is about the division against the practice of teaching profession as well as the penal revision. Thus, no person shall offer to practice or get appointed to any position calling for a teaching profession.
Section 15, Qualification Requirements of Applicants. No applicant shall be admitted to take examination unless he shall have complied with the requirements. A graduate of a school, college, or university recognized by the government and possesses the minimum education requirements. Section 36, Registration and Exemption. In this section, no person shall engage in teaching as defined in this Act, whether in every levels of education, unless a person is a duly registered professional teacher and a holder valid or temporary permit.
What about those professional teachers who have not practiced the profession?
There is actually a year requirement, and it is on a 5-year basis. If the teachers haven't practiced their profession, they shall take at least units of pedagogy and 6 units of content, and is equivalent to reading a number of hours. Section 31, Transitory Provision. Para-teachers are those who took proficient teachers examination with a rating of not lower than 5% points from the passing general average. And in this section, they will be given a special permit with a validity of 3 and 5 years and be allowed to expire.
Public Act 4670, Magna Carta for Public School Teachers. In Section 1, it aims to promote and improve the social and economic status of public employment and career prospect in order that they may compare favorably with existing opportunities. And in Section 5 states the stability on employment and security tenure shall be assured that teachers as provided under existing laws. Also, in Section 6 says that no teacher shall be transferred from one station to the other without his consent. Section 8 states also that every teacher shall enjoy equitable safeguards of any disciplinary procedure and shall have the right to inform about the charges.
Section 9 states the charges against a teacher shall be heard initially by a committee composed of the corresponding school superintendent of the division or a duly authorized representative who should at least have the rank of a division supervisor. While in Section 10, in entering the teaching profession, there shall be no discrimination or during its exercise in the termination of service. Section 11 says that the proper authority shall take all steps enabled married couples, both of whom are public school teachers, to be employed in the same locality. And in Section 15 to 19, it discusses the criteria for salaries and other benefits or allowance for teachers, which is the COLA and Special Hardship Allowance.
I also hear medical examinations for teachers are required, and is also protected the consequence of employment injuries.
Yes, in Section 22 of RA 4670, it was stated that teachers do undergo medical exams, and in Section 23, they are also protected against employment injuries and it is free of charge.
And what about Sections 25 to 27? I hear teachers are provided with leave when they're sick, also about retirement and about forming an organization.
You heard it right. Section 25 states the indefinite leave for teachers when having treatment for some serious illnesses, and in Section 26 states about the salary increase upon retirement when a teacher had fulfilled the age and service requirements which is applicable. Lastly, in Section 27 is about giving the freedom for the teacher to form or join an organization locally, nationally, or internationally.
And now, let's go on to the Code of Ethics for Professional Teachers. Preamble. Teachers are duly licensed professionals who possess dignity and reputation with high moral values as well as technical and professional competence in the practice of their noble profession, and they strictly adhere to, observe, and practice this set of ethical and moral principles, standards, and values.
For the Code of Ethics for Professional Teacher, in Section 1, the Philippine Constitution shall offer quality education for all competent teachers. In Section 2, the Code itself covers our public and private school teachers in all levels of education.
I bet this article that the teacher and state talks about how low or living moral life should be taught by the teachers, right?
Yes, this article consists of 8 sections. Section 1 states that teachers are the nurseries of the future citizens and is obliged to transmit the learners such heritage and promote obedience to laws of the state. Section 2 also talks about how a teacher or a school official shall help carry out the declared policies of the state. And in Section 3, teachers shall be physically, mentally, and morally fit to teach.
And what about election? Does that included under his law for the teachers?
Again, yes. In Section 5 stated that a teacher shall not engage in any promotion of any political, religious, or any partisan interest. Section 6 also said that teachers shall vote and shall exercise all rights and responsibilities. In Section 7, a teacher shall not use his position or authority to influence anyone to follow any political course of action.
Teacher and the community and profession, how does this two being different?
The teacher and the community simply states the act that a teacher is a facilitator of a development of the youth who provides leadership and is active to community movement and also understand local costumes and traditions. Thus, this simply means that a teacher inside the community lays different positions not just in school. Meanwhile, teacher and the profession also tackles about teachers, ensure that teaching is the noblest profession, whom upholds highest position standards, who also imbued with the spirit of professional loyalty, mutual confidence, and others in one another. Hence, it defines the teachers holding their professions as a jewelry to anyone which upholds also dignity in teaching.
What if a teacher makes false accusation or charges against his or her superior?
He or she shall not do it especially under anonymity. But if there are valid charges, presenting such under oath should be given no competent authority, so that teacher shall make it his duty to make an honest effort to understand legitimate policies. In addition to this, Article teachers has also a right to seek justice to injustices. What happened when teachers violate any of this law?
Well, teachers shall be sufficient ground for imposition against the erring teachers of the disciplinary action consisting of revocations of his certification of registration and license as a professional teacher.
And now, let's go on the legal underpinnings of Philippine education.
And this is the educational structure of education.
Child-Friendly School System, or the CFSS, is a project of the United Nations Children's Funds, or the UNICEF, and the DepEd. Every Child Reader Program, or the ECORP, it is designed to improve the delivery of instruction of reading teachers in grade 1 to grade 3. Brigada Eskwela capitalizing on the spirit of bayanihan.
Meanwhile, ADAP is called providing a venue for the strong and dynamic private sector to participate in nation building through investments in education of Filipino children. While the Alternative Learning System, or ALS, a free education program, ladderized modular, non-formal education program by Department of Education. The National Elementary School Curriculum 1983 to 2002 minimum learning competencies, which is mastery of learning, was emphasized in the NESC. While the new secondary education curriculum in 1991 to 2002, Bureau of Secondary Education implemented the NSEC in the schools. The NSEC included learning areas to be taught for 400 minutes daily from first year to fourth year.
The objectives of elementary and secondary education serve as the official learning goals of basic education as stated for a particular population of learners, that is, the elementary and secondary education learners. Objectives from elementary, secondary, and also non-formal education was provided by the Education Act of 1982 or Batas Pambansa bilang 232.
Teachers of 2002 BEC or RBEC puts greater emphasis on helping every learner become a successful reader. Hence, curriculum structure of 2002 BEC RBEC medium of instruction both elementary and secondary education follows the DepEd bilingual policy, which means the medium will be Filipino and English.
Lastly, a model was developed by J. McTighe and Grant Wiggins and has its curriculum design, which is the Stage 1, identify desired results, Stage 2, determine acceptable evidence or assessment, and Stage 3, plan learning experiences and instruction strengths.
And I know now that you have already understood the history of education and its legal foundations.
History of education comes with how successful it is right now, the past that foresees the success of today.
And without the existence of laws and policies, education will be chaotic.
Our campaign aims to let every education student know more about history and laws of education, which connects us to reality.